morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for today's virtual meetup, using metrics and analytics to supercharge your experimentation. We're here in Bellevue, Washington, and really excited to be hosting this for you today because we recently launched our analytics offering at Statsig via Metrics Explorer, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about why this is important in the context of experimentation. So I'm Sid, a product marketing manager at Statsig.
My name is Pierre. I'm an engineering manager on the product team at Statsig, spending a lot of time working on analytics.
My name is Alex. I'm a software engineer who's been working on a lot of the analytics offerings at Statsig as well.
Yeah, we have got some great examples to discuss today and a lot of insights and takeaways that hopefully you can go and implement in your companies after the meetup. Just want to get a couple of quick housekeeping things out of the way before we get started. The first is that we will be available on the chat throughout the meetup, so do engage with us, share your questions, or if something resonated with you, let us know. Or if you had better pointers to make, please share, and we'll compile them for the benefit of everyone. And we'll also be sending you the recording of today's video, so you can evangelize this internally in a few days. So without further ado, you both said you work at Facebook, so I'm really curious to know if you could share how you guys thought about metrics and analytics back at Facebook.
Yeah, I spent about 6 years at Facebook before joining Statsig, a couple of years on search and a couple of years working with Vijay on the gaming team. The way that I observed most product teams to work at Facebook was that a high-level goal for the team or organization was set, and then PMs, engineers, data scientists, whoever you were, felt empowered to go and come up with ideas for product changes, new products that we should build, and things like that, which might ladder up to help us meet that goal. So analytics was really crucial to figuring out exactly what should we build, what changes might have the behavior that we hope to see in users. And we had a lot of really, really great tools that helped us do that, from the Gatekeeper tool for flagging, the experiments tool, and then also Scuba, Hive, Daiquiri to help us query data and really get a sense for how different people were using our product.
Nice. Do you have any example that you can share, of any growth hack that you came across?
Yeah, I think one famous example from early on at Facebook of an insight that was super helpful was finding out that adding 7 friends in the first 10 days meant that a user was a lot more likely to retain and stick around. So that led to a lot of products that were built all across Facebook, letting you put in your import your phone contact list so that you could easily start Facebook with a bunch of friends.
Yeah, or making it way easier to search for your friends. So you could search for them by phone number or search for them by email. There's also the people you may know unit that you see in feed. That's been in the product for a very long time, and it still has a ranking team to this day working on improving the ranking for that. So that one insight many, many years ago led to a huge number of product changes that really, really helped with growth at Facebook.
Yeah, and that really shows how powerful these little insights can be. And I think it's also important to point out that it's not just in the context of a large app like Facebook or a consumer facing company, but also very relevant, I think, in the context of B2B SaaS. I remember during my time at Adobe on their Creative Cloud team, which is products like Photoshop, Premiere Pro, a lot of their flagship tools, they had a really strong strategy and operations unit driving retention revenue, driving ARR growth. And they had these really nice KPIs that they had learned that would ladder up to engagement and retention. For example, there was a KPI on users using 3 or more apps within the suite of 20 apps. And they knew that those users had a much higher propensity to retain. They also knew that, users who activated their product within 7 days of being assigned a license also had a higher propensity to retain. So these,
you see this across every single industry. Not just inside consumer product, but even in B2B and SaaS products. Slack had another very similar one to the Adobe Insight, where they saw that once 2,000 messages were exchanged within a team, 93% of accounts on that team would retain. So there was a huge push to get those first few thousand messages sent.
Yeah, and I think they had some interesting features they capped messages beyond a certain point, like 10,000. So it just kind of arbitrarily made people think more about sending messages or like using what they had. And so it's really cool how even in the Adobe or Slack examples that these companies use simple insights to then align various initiatives and get multiple teams driving towards that goal. So really cool insights.
Yeah, we see this a lot with our customers, with the customers of Statsig today. I think there was a recent example with Lime.
Yeah. One of our customers, Lime, was acquiring a lot of new users, but they wanted to make sure that those users actually stuck around and retained. And so they weren't really sure how to improve the retention, but the key insight they found out was that a lot of their first-time users weren't able to start their rides. So of course this leads to a lot of cancellations and refunds, and most importantly, they're not going to come back if they can't even start a ride. So they were able to run a couple of experiments, and they were able to reduce the number of canceled trips by 5% just by adding a simple GIF of kickstarting a scooter, and by reducing refunds by 20% by adding a new onboarding tutorial.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think that a small GIF of someone kicking off a scooter could reduce cancellations by 5%. But once you have like that key insight that people are struggling to start their ride, I think it's very easy to make the leap from that to the product change that might fix that.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's important, yeah.
With the Facebook, Friends example, or Adobe's like multiple app use, or Lime's, onboarding flow, it's so impactful that a small insight can have huge ROI and business value.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm curious to know, like it seems so magical and so perfect, but what are some common pitfalls that we need to watch out for when we're thinking through this?
Yeah, I think one important call out to make is just causation versus correlation. Just because you see a correlation between two metrics, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a causal effect between the two. Like if you think about the Facebook example, for example, if you just helped people add any 7 friends, it probably would not have been quite as effective as helping you find the people that you know in real life. So there's a question about the quality of the friends that you're adding there, so you need to drill deeper on that. And then you also need to just kind of make sure that you test any hypothesis that you have. If you generate a hypothesis from an insight, running an experiment to validate that increasing metric A will ladder up to an increase in metric B is something that's really critical. I think human brains are really good at telling stories around why two metrics have a causal effect, and at least I personally have fallen into that pitfall many times where I assume that there's a causal effect and I try and increase metric A without actually seeing the results that I expected.
Yeah, very well might be that users who are interested in Facebook and want to use the platform are more likely to add 7 friends.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that making them add 7 friends is necessarily going to make them more engaged, but in this case, they tested it and found out that it did. Another really important thing to keep track of is novelty effects and long-term effects. So it's pretty easy to improve a metric just by sending a bunch of notifications and bringing in more users. It's going to look like your retention's doing really well, but then it's going to kind of drop off once you stop sending them those notifications. At Facebook, we had a team who was dedicated to making sure there was a high quality bar on all the notifications sent, that there was some minimum click-through, because they found that once they diluted the value of notifications, they couldn't really get that back. And
Yeah, keeping an eye on the long-term effects of the changes that you make is like really critically important here. Every single growth team that I knew at Facebook would spend some amount of time adding new notifications, and realizing very quickly just how important the quality bar there was. Like if you just imagine your phone screen with a full list of push notifications, the individual signal of each of those is very heavily reduced if you don't have a quality bar. So
Yeah, no one wants to be spammed with notifications. So I think it's really important to know the aha moment behind that metric. So it's not just about like notifications or friends or messages sent on Slack. It's really to know like how are the users realizing value, and then like you said, like validating those hypotheses before driving against those metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So to summarize, 3 key takeaways from what we've discussed so far. I think the first is that it's really difficult to directly build features for high-level KPIs like retention or revenue, but easier to drive against KPIs that ladder up to it. And all the examples we've discussed so far kind of like get to that. Second, I think, as Alex pointed out, you need to think about long-term impact. Like long-term retention is more important than just solely focusing on like those instant gratification metrics. Like, oh, I got more users to open my app today, but like you might be hurting things in the long term. And I think finally, it's empowering your users and helping them realize value is what ultimately drives engagement and retention. So the metrics in many ways are like a heuristic or a shortcut for us to like drive against the goal. But you need to also, you should never lose the nuance of like what is it that users actually are getting value out of, right? So I would urge a lot of our audience tuning in today to think about what actions matter most to your users. Knowing which actions do matter will help you formulate the right kind of like KPIs and build the right features that drive against those. So we already alluded to the idea of running experiments to test your hypotheses, Pierre. You spoke about this. A lot of growth teams that I speak with, they tell me that we want to run more experiments. We want to do this, but have a lot of operational issues in making this a reality. They point to having siloed data, too many tools in their stack, and just disagreements between cross-functional teams. So I'm curious to know, like, how are things at Facebook, given that they're such a large matrixed organization?
Yeah, I think there's two really key important pieces here that really helped Facebook move quickly in this respect. So the first is that there was one single centralized source of truth for all of the data that was being used. So at Facebook, it was all the same data. If you wanted to run an experiment or launch your feature or look for insights in analytics, you were looking at the same data every time. I've seen some companies where they'll use one product for experimentation, another product for the analytics, a third product for assignment and experimentation and flagging and
plus in-house tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think once you have all of these different siloed chunks of data, it's really hard to figure out what the actual truth is. Another really important piece is that at Facebook, we had like democratized access to all of this data and decision making.
Yeah.
So every PM, engineer, or DS was empowered to dig into the data themselves or make decisions about an experiment or move forward as quickly as they could possibly move. I have a friend of mine that was recently talking to me at a big B2B SaaS company. He was recently talking to me about an experiment that he had wanted to run. He wrote the code for it in a few days and was ready to launch his test.
Yeah.
And then he had to wait 3 full weeks for the DS team to free up and have resources for him to actually run the experiment, even though it was a very simple experiment that he was trying to run, which was just looking for regression. So process and siloing who can make decisions and who can look at data and who can launch experiments can really, really slow you down. And that was a big part of how Facebook was able to move so quickly on these things.
Yeah, this is like the main reason that at Statsig we don't do seat-based pricing.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of other B2B companies. We think that like if you do seat-based pricing, it's going to end up being just one function is the only one who's looking at the experiments and looking at the results, and we think that everyone should be able to like dig in and find their own interesting insights into everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I now have all my data for experiments and my metrics all in one platform. And say I launched a new feature and some important KPI like conversions improves by 5% overall, but maybe in one specific cohort of users, like in a specific geography, it's actually improving by say 20%, but it's either flat or negative in other regions, and I'm not aware of this. Like that would be a problem. So have you ever come across this sort of thing, and like how do you deal with doing this sort of cohort-based filtering?
Yeah, absolutely. You've hammered home a really interesting point here, which is when you're looking for insights and trends in your data, you should take real good care to slice by different demographics and platforms, etc., for users, because they will very, very often behave very differently.
Yeah.
I've run into this myself a large number of times. A 12 to 20-year-old bucket of users is going to behave entirely differently to a 45 to 70 year old user of buckets. As a product engineer, you have a lot of biases based on the environment that you grew up in, the country that you grew up in, and you have to make sure that those biases don't make their way into the product. So behavior can be drastically different between two different demographics, and you should cut by those different demographics to understand better why you're seeing a certain trend in one demographic or another.
Yeah, and just because you see a difference in in a demographic. Like you might see that one country is impacted like very differently by an experiment that you're running than other countries. You might think it's that one country just kind of behaves differently from the other countries, but it could also very well just be that you have a bug. It might be something that like only affects a certain browser that people in that country use more often than other countries. So it's really important to be able to like slice all of your metrics or experiment results by these different things so that you can really understand the full picture and like see everything that's going into that metric.
Yeah, slicing by OS, platform, even app version is critically important when you're looking at these metric lifts, because I've been bitten by that many times where we'll think that a certain metric lift is from a difference in behavior. And we'll drill down into that metric lift and we'll find it's only isolated to V283 on iOS, and it's because there was a bug on that platform. So,
beware of bugs. Like that's the one takeaway. Beware of bugs. No, but I love that example that you said also about, the search behaviors in Southeast Asia could especially resonate with some of that because I've come from India. But I was recently speaking with one of our customers who's a CDO of a really large global online fashion brand with presence in over 160 countries. And he was talking a lot about, the importance of that localization and creating culturalized experiences in different regions. Because he was like, oh, maybe in Germany, the best practice is different from what it is in France or in Southeast Asia. In some countries, like privacy features are really important. So they highlight that in the checkout workflow, while in others, cash on delivery as a payment method might be important, so you might want to bring that out. And he said by doing some of these simple changes, like in creating those bespoke experiences, they drive double-digit growth in conversion. So found that really fascinating, and totally connects with the examples that you guys brought up. So I think this is a good segue into talking a bit more about retention. We all know that retention is a really broad goal. And most C-level executives are like, I want you to improve retention, So how do I go about breaking that down? Like, how do you think about it?
Absolutely. So retention is probably the best possible metric to understand if you found product market fit and if people are actually getting value from your product. Like, are they sticking around? Are they coming back? But it's really, really difficult to set retention as a metric and see it move as a result of the product changes that you're making. Because retention tends to have like a longer delay for when you'll actually see, from the time that a user has a really positive experience with your product to the time that they choose to come back is a really long feedback loop. So it's harder to measure it. I tend to find that looking at retention is really good to understand where people drop off at a really high level, and then use that to, once you have that high level insight, then you can drill down deeper to optimize certain parts of your product. So if you see that people are not coming back week over week, maybe users are struggling to have that aha moment or see value in your product. Or if you find that users drop off after about a month, it might be interesting to try out different re-engagement tactics, re-engagement emails, stuff like that. Yeah. So it's really good at a high level to understand when users do drop off.
Yeah, definitely. And if you see that they're not coming back the very next day, like your D1 retention is just like really low, then it might be something as simple as like they're having trouble in the sign-up form or whatever onboarding flow you have. Or it could be something more complicated, like they're not really getting to the aha moment that makes them like understand the value of your product and like want to come back and use it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm reminded of using Canva for the first time, and like I'm a terrible designer. I have no skills whatsoever. And I remember I created my account, and there was so many amazing elements that immediately got me to realize value and have that aha moment that you said, because they gave me templates, and as a marketer I was able to go create a few things that I needed, and unexpectedly I had output within in my first login, and that actually drove my retention. So no, I think that's a great talking point, to segue into onboarding. The onboarding funnel is obviously something a lot of companies want to improve. So how do people think about these funnels and optimizing on that?
Yeah, so once you've identified, looking at your retention, that there's steep drop off after a certain point, you can drill down a lot deeper. So if we know that retention is poor after day one, looking at the onboarding or the sign up funnel to understand how people convert between each step is something that's extremely valuable to fine tune and deeply understand where exactly do people get stuck. it's really, these funnels will be all over your product, so it's not just onboarding. But it's really, really important to find and deeply understand these, because if you're working on growth without strong retention, or if you're working on growth with a leaky funnel specifically, you're going to be wasting your time. You know, your growth work is going to be most effective when you're able to capture a much larger percentage of users as they step through a funnel. So a good example is like sign-up flows.
Yeah, definitely. Sign-up flows is definitely something where you'll see a lot of users drop off just because the form is too long, or there's like some kind of issue partway through where they don't feel like putting in their company name or all the different pieces of information you're asking for.
Yeah, asking for sensitive information during a sign-up form is like one of the first ways to get people to drop off. No one wants to share their you know, why is this service that I'm using asking me for my mother's maiden name and my date of birth? It's like, so identifying which step people don't convert between in your sign-up flow is a great way to look at your onboarding funnel and find leaks and plug them where you can to drive higher retention.
Yeah, and I remember one of our customers on a case study was telling me how they, in order to improve their conversion in the checkout flow, they realized that we should just do away with requiring an account creation for a new user, but instead just have them have a code email to their email ID so that they can just get that checkout done and generate revenue. And in fact, they probably sign up for an account anyway once they have bought a product. So they did this and they had double-digit increase in conversion. Right. So again, very simple insight, knowing which part of the funnel was a problem. That account creation step is where there's a bit of a drop off, and they fixed it.
Yeah, they basically just removed the funnel at the beginning. And Another good example is Tavor. They're one of our customers as well. They have a payment flow where you have to put in your address, and they were running an experiment where they updated how they generated the list of options for the addresses. They had like an autocomplete. And they saw there was like a big drop off on like completing the address part of the funnel. So like they dug into it and they realized that when you tapped on the address in the new version of the form, the keyboard would like pop up and cover some of the options. Right. So they couldn't get past that step. So it was super easy once they then like went back and dog fooded it to figure out like what the issue was, and very easy fix.
I would suggest that you take a look at the funnels in your product today and identify where there are leaks. Because keep in mind, the cost of acquiring a user is typically significantly higher than the cost of retaining or reactivating a user that's already churned. So finding where those leaks are is going to be something that's like really critical to get a product that's really going to grow.
And I think we all know that it's much easier or cheaper to retain a user than acquire one. I remember on a recent flight, I was with our head of product and MA, and she was trying to connect to the in-flight Wi-Fi because they had all these promotions on like, connect to our in-flight Wi-Fi. So they were driving a lot of traffic. They spent a lot of money to get us on that page, and then there was some glitch in the page. There was a broken form, so no one could actually sign up for that Wi-Fi. So they probably saw that we have so much incoming traffic to this page, but no conversions. And so like just knowing that that's where there is a drop off. Like in that page is where people are not progressing, can help you debug or you can figure out what's going on, right? And I think a lot of the examples we spoke about, like it really came down to knowing where in the funnel is there a drop off, so that you can prioritize your product roadmaps to build more features to solve for that part of the funnel. So if you know that our conversions are low, is it because the product page on your e-commerce site should be more engaging? Or is it the order review and editing part where the drop-off is? Or is it the payment where the drop-off is? And just knowing that can then help product teams say, okay, this is where we're going to spend the next quarter, building features for. So, on that note, we've talked about a lot of examples, and hopefully a lot of you have been able to resonate with some of these, maybe even encountered some of these problems and challenges in your businesses. I'm really excited to have Pierre show us what we've been building at Statsig in the last 6 to 12 months to augment our analytical capabilities and to make that vision of having the same single source of truth for your experiments and analyses So Pierre, you can take it from here. Show us what we've been working on.
Sounds good. Yeah, let me share my screen. I can give you guys a quick
Yeah.
demo on the things we've been working on. Cool. So we just recently released Metrics Explorer as part of Statsig, which has a few really useful capabilities that I can just give you a quick demo through. So you can take a look at top-line values of any metric that you've sent to Statsig, and you can go ahead and slice that by any cohort of users that you're interested in. So for example, I can group any metric by the country that the users came from, and then filter down to US for further analysis because I'm interested in that specific cohort. You can filter on any user properties or any event data that you've logged alongside your event. So it's really useful for just breaking down and understanding how different cohorts of users are using your product. You can also view this data in a bunch of different ways. So you can look at a time series. You can look at this grouped as a bar chart. You can also look at like the direct logs and samples of these events. So yeah, super useful for just drilling down into the top level of a metric. We have a few other useful tools here. So we have a retention tool. You can use this to generate a retention curve between any two events or metrics that you've sent to Statsig. So super useful for identifying drop-off, as we were speaking about earlier. And you can look at this to generate a triangle chart or a retention curve. We also have a funnels tool where you can generate a funnel between any number of events that you've sent to Statsig. So as we mentioned earlier, super useful for identifying where there are leaky parts of your funnel. If you know that your users are not coming back on day one, you can drill down into your sign-up flow to figure out where folks are dropping off. Once you've done any of these analyses, you can export any of these to a dashboard for future use. So you can be able to generate a bunch of different interesting charts that are interesting for a specific product or feature, and then export all of those charts to a dashboard and share that around with your team, or look into that weekly to understand how your metrics are moving over time. These are the analyses that we support today, and we're really rapidly adding more analytics features week over week. So check back soon. And if you have any specific feature requests, we'd love for you to help shape the future of our analytics roadmap as we continue to add features to the Metrics Explorer. So please feel free to drop us a message in Slack if there's any specific types of analysis that you're interested in doing that are not currently supported today. There's a few really exciting updates that are going to be coming soon, which will let you slice any of your metrics by any experiment group or any custom cohort of users. So a lot of new features coming soon. Drop us a message if you'd like to see anything specific.
Yeah, I think it really, you can think about it as like being able to solve for a lot of the kind of pain points and use cases that we discussed today. So I'm really excited to see what you guys build in the coming weeks and months ahead. And I think we do take user feedback very seriously. So if you're already a Statsig customer and you want to start using Metrics Explorer, it's super easy to get started right away. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Be sure to join our Slack community. We are very active, not just with Statsig employees, but also other members in the broader experimentation community. So be sure to take advantage of that, and we hope to continue this conversation after today as well. So on that note, thank you so much for joining us today on a Thursday morning. I really appreciate both of you as well to be hosting this with us. I know you gave amazing pointers that a lot of our audience can think about how it can be contextualized to their organization. And we will be on the Zoom for another 10 minutes or so. So please keep your questions coming on the live chat, and our team will continue answering them. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us, and bye for now.
Thanks for your time.